Welcome back. We are ready to talk about problem 3, transactions for a merchandising entity. In problem 2, you use T accounts for a service-oriented business to create a trial balance and eventually some financial statements. In this problem, we're going to focus on a merchandiser, and a merchandiser is someone who buys and sells merchandise in the same form. If you need to brush up on your accounting skills, I would encourage you to pull out an old Accounting 100 textbook, or you can go to my website and read the appropriate handouts for my Accounting 100 class. I'll demonstrate this shortly. Once again, as we work through these transactions, think about a store that you like to shop at. Chances are it is a merchandiser. So to begin, you need to go to Canvas and find the directions as well as the Excel file for problem P3. I would encourage you to print the directions out, and we're ready to begin. The objectives of problem 3 are to record purchasing transactions for a merchandising firm, to record sales transactions for a merchandising firm, to be able to foot the T accounts and transfer amounts to a trial balance electronically, prepare a schedule of accounts receivable and accounts payable for the customers and vendors respectively, and to be able to compute components of an income statement. Some of those components are net sales, the net delivered cost of purchases, as well as some other items, and as always, to be able to create a chart. For merchandisers in Accounting 100, you learn that whichever merchandiser you're thinking of, they buy and sell all day long. And so it's important to understand how to record transactions from both sides of the house. These next few slides are just to refresh your memory on some of the accounts that we'll be using. In this problem, the company uses a periodic inventory system, which means that the inventory account is not touched at all throughout the year until the end of the company's fiscal year, when they adjust the inventory to the physical count. So on the sales side of the house, we'll be using accounts such as you see on the screen, remembering that the main revenue account for any merchandiser is sales. And in addition, you see a couple contra accounts listed there. And again, hopefully this isn't new to you. If it's been a while since you've had Accounting 100, again, please feel free to refer to an earlier book or, of course, to my website. Also, if you go to the accounting labs, there's lots of books in the back of the classroom provided for your use and for your reference. So, again, familiarize yourself with some of the sales accounts. And then the way we report sales is by computing an amount called net sales. So I provided this slide from a textbook just to give you a little refresher on how to compute net sales. You'll be asked to do that. On the purchasing side of the house, here's some commonly used accounts just to refresh your memory. Again, we are using a periodic inventory system, which means when we purchase merchandise, we'll be recording the transactions in the purchases account. Any freight costs will go to an account called Freight In. And of course, just as we had on the sales side, there's also contra accounts on the purchasing side. And once again, in the analysis part of this problem, you'll be asked to determine certain components. So I wanted to refresh your memory a little bit about how the cost of purchases is determined. So when you do the income statement or compute the components of an income statement, you'll be asked to figure out the total cost of purchases. And this section of the income statement combines information about the cost of the purchases, the freight in, the purchases, returns, and allowances will be subtracted because it's a contra account, as well as any purchase discounts, which are discounts that we claim on payments made to our vendors or suppliers. And here's an example of a company from an Accounting 100 class who had the various items, and you'll see that net delivered cost of purchases is basically the purchases, including the freight, less any contras. If you think about what the word net means in terms of your net paycheck that you take home, it's your net pay after all the deductions have been taken out. Similarly, when we calculate the net delivered cost of purchases, it's the cost of the purchases, including freight, less any deductions. Similar to your net paycheck, net delivered cost of purchases. And so let's get started with the Excel. Here's the Excel file that you downloaded from the Canvas website, and I've created the accounts for you, and I added across the top a few minutes ago to help us with the accounting the fundamental accounting equation: assets equals liabilities plus the equity umbrella, which goes up for capital and revenue and goes down for expenses. I've provided the accounts that you'll use to record the transactions, so let's get started. The first transaction says on January 1st, William Evans started Evans Distributor with an investment of $49,000 cash. He also invested personal business supplies worth $1,000. So let's record that transaction. We would debit cash for $49,000, and I would strongly encourage you to put dates, and you can type it out. What I'm going to do is use an apostrophe in front of the date, just so I don't have to mess with formatting. So my first date is going to be 1/1. I debited cash for $49,000. I'm going to debit the supplies account for the $1,000. Put my date in there. And as always, when the owner invests money into the company, the credit is going to go to the owner's capital account. So the total of those two items invested would be $50,000. And again, for each transaction, I'm notating the date. And that is my first transaction. As always, make sure that your debits equal your credits for each transaction. That'll prevent you having to go search for your errors later. Number 2 says purchase merchandise for cash, $10,500. So if we're purchasing merchandise, we're going to go over to the expense account. We're going to use the purchases account because it's a periodic inventory system. I'll debit purchases for $10,500. I'll drop my date in, and the credit is going to be to cash for the same amount. As you notice, I've provided totals on the accounts, so as you input your transactions, these totals should be updating automatically. One more transaction. Sold merchandise on account to Chew Corporation for $750. The terms were $210 net 30, which means that we are offering our customer a 2% discount if they pay within 10 days. Otherwise, the whole amount is due in 30. So since we're selling the merchandise on account, we need to debit accounts receivable. Okay, so let me come up to that account for $750. Once again, I'm going to put my date down, January 3rd. And we'll credit our revenue account called sales for the same $750. That would be on 1/3. Okay, now, anytime you use accounts receivable, you also need to go update the subsidiary accounts, the customer's account, or sometimes called the accounts receivable subsidiary ledger. So to help you remember that, to help me remember that, I'm highlighting my whole accounts receivable in yellow. Again, anytime you touch accounts receivable, you need to update the subsidiary accounts. So in the spreadsheet, you'll see a tab called Supporting Schedules. I'm going to go over to there. I'm going to find the person's account. Here it is, the Chew Corporation. I'm going to drop the date in, which is 1/3/16. On the description, you should put some kind of a description, maybe invoice 1001. Don't worry about any of the post references. And that would have been a debit to accounts receivable for $750. And the balance is $750. Remember, at any given time, the totals in the subsidiary ledger should equal the totals in the controlling account, in this case, accounts receivable. That check and balance feature is always, always, always in effect, so double check that. Also, the question might come up, how come there was no sales tax involved in that last transaction? Well, you'll notice in the problem that this is a company called Evans Distributors, which probably means he's a wholesaler, so he would not be required to charge tax to his customers because the tax is paid by the end user. That's why there was no sales tax involved in this transaction. Let's do one more. On January 4th, we purchased merchandise on account from Whitson Company, 1,800, terms 110, net 30. Okay, that means that we are doing the buying and we owe someone money, and so in this case we're going to be using accounts payable. And just like accounts receivable, accounts payable is also supported by a subsidiary ledger. So let me go back to the T accounts and record this transaction. I'm going to go to my purchases account and put in the amount, 1,800. Put in my date. The date is the 4th. And since I bought this on account, I'm going to go use my liability account called accounts payable, where I'll put in the same amount, 1,800 on the credit side because my liability is going up. I'll drop in the date. And just like accounts receivable, as I mentioned, the accounts payable is also a controlling account. So I'm going to highlight this one in orange, and anytime I hit accounts payable, I need to go update my supporting schedule. And this time, instead of the accounts receivable ledger, I'm going to go use the accounts payable ledger, and I'm looking for Whitson Manufacturing. Here it is. I'm going to drop in the date, January 4th. I'm going to put in a description, which in this case is going to be an invoice number. And whoops, what might help you, you don't have to do this, but you might want to put the terms in. I should have thought about that on the other one. That may help you when you go pay these things later. And since this is an accounts payable account, we would have credited it. So I'm going on the credit side for $1,800. And that means my balance is $1,800. You're going to notice that your trial balance column totals are automatically updating as you enter every transaction. So it would be a good idea for you to check the totals at the bottom after every transaction to ensure you're not missing one. And at some point, your supporting schedules are going to need to be summarized here on these schedules of accounts receivable and payable. So don't forget that you need to do that as well. I did the schedule of accounts receivable. You're going to go create the schedule of accounts payable over here in a very similar fashion. Okay, that's part of the requirement of this problem. So continue recording the transactions. Also, at some point in your problem, you're going to be asked to show the formula. So I thought I would demonstrate that to you. You're going to create another tab or worksheet. I believe I told you to call this formulas. And the easiest way to copy and paste is just to go to your T accounts, to come over here to this section so that you highlight the entire problem, and then you've learned lots of ways to copy and paste. I'm going to use the icon so I can show you. I'm going to hit the copy button, come over to the formulas tab that I just created, and paste the items here. And then, as you know, hit Control tilde to show the formulas. Okay, some of these I created, some of them you'll be creating. And what I should see on your trial balance is nothing but cell references. You're going to do the same thing for the schedules of accounts receivable and accounts payable. You should do your best, if you can, to make sure that it fits on one page. That's not always possible, but in most of these it is. So I'm going to print preview my work right now by clicking the quick access toolbar, and you can see that it fits on 10 pages right now. So we don't want to use 10 pages, so I'm going to hit my page setup, and maybe I want to fit it to 1 page wide by maybe a couple pages tall. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, and it looks like it fit that on 1 page. I'm probably going to landscape this to see what that looks like. Before I submit it, I want to make sure my work is as neat as possible, and that looks pretty good. Okay, so before you submit your work, you should check and make sure that it prints out appropriately, because that's part of good spreadsheet modeling. Also, in one of the requirements, you'll be asked to compute the various components of the financial statement. So on the Financials tab, I expect you to create in good format the various components of the income statement. For example, net sales. And the slide that I showed you previously will give you a good example of how to do that. And of course, your chart is also a specific component. So don't forget to create each part according to the directions and make sure that your work is complete prior to submitting it. So hopefully that little demonstration gave you enough confidence to finish the problem on your own. Remember to complete the problem according to the directions and double check the requirements, making sure that your work is complete prior to submitting it. Once you submit it to me, I'm grading it. You can't submit it 2 or 3 or 4 times. I grade your final requirement. So take the time to look at the requirements, even use a checkoff list to make sure that everything is in order. Don't forget to upload your file and check to see if there is any discussion post that applies to this problem. If you need help, just ask. I'm here to help you, and we're here to help each other as well. You have my email address. You also have a Canvas messaging system. If you'd like to ask for help from other classmates, don't forget that you have a discussion board. It's pinned to the top of the class where you can ask for hints or ask a student to respond to your question as well. There's also staffed accounting labs. You guys all have the hours that the accounting labs are in process, and I wanted to remind you that you can also print for free in the accounting labs, and the accounting labs are staffed by instructors who are very focused on Excel and can answer any question you may have. Again, don't hesitate to reach out for help. I'm here to help you along this journey and look forward to working with you, and I also look forward to reading your discussion posts. Until we meet again, I'm signing off.